Okay, everybody, we are back, and I am finally doing this video. This video started out as an Edge Transit review for the Brave Edge Transit, and then it kind of shifted to being more about grenade launchers as a whole, and then kind of comparing them as a damage option after some of the buffs they've gotten, and I kind of think it's going to stay with that. We will be looking at Edge Transit, since that is one of the two grenade launchers I think are really good here, but it's less of a review of Edge Transit specifically and more about grenade launchers as a whole, although if you are looking for Edge Transit God roll advice, that will be in this video. I'm not going to waste any more time on the intro. I have re-recorded, retested, and re-edited this video like 4 times at this point, hoping to get it to a space that I think I'm happy with it. So if you liked it, found it helpful, like, subscribe, always greatly appreciated. Let's not waste any more time, and let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so first things first, when we talk damage, the grenade launchers we're looking at are going to be used mostly interchangeably, and it's going to be Edge Transit and Cataphract. The main reason is because Cataphract and Edge Transit, I think, both have the same god roll, being Envious Assassin and Bait and Switch. And when you have two weapons that use the same RPM archetype and the same damage perks, then you're looking at basically the same damage output. That said, I will say that I do think Cataphract is better, and here is why. The main reason is that Cataphract is Strand. And since Cataphract is Strand, it can surge match with Scatter Signal, which is a great legendary fusion rifle. There's no similarly strong Void fusion rifle that Edge Transit can surge match with. That said, I don't think it's the biggest deal, because if you're using something like a kinetic weapon for whatever reason, like Mountaintop, then it doesn't really matter that Cataphract matches Scatter Signal, because Mountaintop would not match either of them, would not match Edge Transit or Cataphract. But that is a point that I think that Cataphract has over Edge Transit, even though I think otherwise the god rolls are basically the same. I will also say that the shiny Edge Transit wacky god roll that you can get that has Envious, Cascade Point, and Bait and Switch, we're not going to be considering in this video, because the odds of getting that are so astronomically low, I don't think it should realistically be in the discussion here, but just know that is going to be really strong, because you basically get to have 3 perks. But again, it will not be focused on here because it's going to be something that such a small number of players are realistically going to have, and I just don't think it's really worth explaining. It's kind of a waste of y'all's time for something that is such a low drop rate. Having established all of this, I can go ahead and let you know that a Edge Transit or Cataphract is going to do 498,871 damage per magazine in 3 seconds. That's with the base magazine size of 6. We'll talk about mini frags and spikes in a second, although you will almost certainly get a 7th shot with mini frags here, because for the per mag normal option, mini frags is a little better because more shots is going to equal more DPS than less shots with spikes. However, Envious Assassin and mini frags have an interesting interaction, so the actual difference is not very large, and I will explain that in just 1 second. But you can look at 166,290 DPS before having to reload, and when you factor in the reload time, that's 90,703 DPS, which is quite good for a heavy weapon, especially one that does not require crits for damage. Now, let's do a quick little talk about mini frags versus spike grenades. Previously, spike grenades was the best thing you could run on a heavy grenade launcher, because spike grenades essentially meant that you would get more damage, straight up more damage. It still works this way on special GLs like Mountaintop, and technically it does still work that way on this one. However, the difference is closer to 3% than the roughly 12.5% you were looking at before. So I do not think spike grenades is as important. A lot of people have kind of default said, well, then mini frags is best, because mini frags gives you a 7th shot. While that is somewhat true, because mini frags giving a 7th shot does make the 1 magazine damage higher, especially if you're using something like auto-loading, where mini frags is much better, there is a little bit of a difference that arises when you use something with Envious Assassin. Envious Assassin's peak overflow value is not going to be based on the magazine size that you see when your magazine perk is factored in. It is based on the size that you see as the base magazine size. So when you have a magazine perk that does not buff or reduce the magazine size, like spike grenades, you will get 18. When you have a 7-round magazine, instead of getting a 21-round mag, you will only get a 19-round magazine. You're still getting that extra mag from mini frags, but only on the base magazine that you loaded, so you only get 1 extra shot. As a result, I do not think that the difference between mini frags and spike grenades when Envious Assassin is in play makes that much of a difference on the total damage output for Cataphract and Edge Transit. It can make a difference. I think technically spike grenades is a little higher because you're getting more of the shots out without mini frags, so the reload factor doesn't really come into play. But it is not a big enough difference that you should throw out one that has mini frags instead of spikes. I think they're both fantastic. The main things you want are going to be your Envious Assassin and your bait and switch. So, now that we've established that, let's talk about how much damage you're going to get in a real scenario where you're going to have your Envious Assassin stacked. Not with the base magazine size, but with your Envious Assassin buffed magazine. Well, you'll be able to fire 19 shots in 8.5 seconds, which is all within the bait and switch time. And you are going to take 2.96 seconds to reload. Per grenade, the first shot is going to hit for 66,565, with about 53.5k being the explosion, another 13,000 being the impact. And then once bait and switch pops, it'll be 86,534, which is going to be 69,589 on the explosion, and 16,945 on the impact. There's some weird ratios going on there that, if you actually look at the math, gets a little weird, but all you need to know is the damage comes up. It comes up by a tiny bit more than expected when you do it with spikes versus no spikes, but it's something weird with grenade launchers and their blast radius compared to their damage values. It's odd. Don't worry about it too much. Just know bait and switch hits for right at about the same amount you'd usually see, 30%. The other thing is Edge Transit and Cataphract both have a 25 round reserve and a 2.96 second reload time, roughly with the versions we were using since our barrels and magazines were the same. And in 19 shots using mini frags, you're going to get 1,624,177 damage total. And the first 19 shots before reloading, that is 191,079 DPS. Which, after you reload, it's still 141,726 DPS, including those 6 remaining shots. It's really, really high. That's crazy high for something like a grenade launcher, especially given how fast a grenade launcher can fire all of its shots. We're going to compare it to our Apex Predator rolls in a minute, since Apex Predator is kind of the current DPS king, but it is really, really solid. The total damage for the whole reserve, which is going to be firing the other remaining 6 shots you have after reloading, is going to put your total damage to 2,123,412, which again is a crazy high amount. That is with just Well of Radiance's 15% buff and then Divinity's 15% debuff for consistency with our other damage tests. That value is crazy high for a heavy weapon right now, and I think it's really, really solid, especially if you need one that does no crits. And the fact that because you empty your reserve so quickly with a grenade launcher, you then get to swap to your special weapon. Your special weapon is going to get you even more damage, which I think if you're using Edge Transit, probably either like Mountaintop or a sniper rifle, maybe just going to Scatter Signal is still good. But with Cataphract, you still have Strand Surges on your boots. You can pull out a triple surge Scatter Signal right after, which is no slouch for damage either. I think it's a great combo. If we want to compare this to Apex Predator, though, I did test a few different roles. I'm not going to waste time on explaining the different roles here, mostly because with the bait and switch nerf, I was curious, does Explosive Light beat bait and switch? Now that, you know, that the first rocket with bait and switch never gets the damage buff. It is the one that activates bait and switch, and then the subsequent rockets get it. Well, Explosive Light, all the rockets get the 25% buff. So I was just curious, I tested it. All you need to know is, no, it doesn't really. Mostly because if you're using rockets for DPS, you're probably going to have Wolfpack rounds. Well, the thing is with Wolfpack rounds, it doesn't work on Explosive Light. It does work on bait and switch. Not to the same degree you would usually expect, but it does work to some degree, and it basically means that bait and switch is going to be better because you're going to get more damage out of your Wolfpack rounds, whereas the raw damage rocket to rocket is really similar between Explosive Light and bait and switch. It's like a 10k difference. The damage difference between Explosive Light and bait and switch, as soon as you factor in Wolfpack rounds, does matter, so we'll be ignoring Explosive Light for this test. I did also look at Surrounded. Surrounded is a little stronger. The math on Wolfpacks for Surrounded is weird, but obviously Surrounded, Enhanced Surrounded being a very, very strong damage perk, only works when you're surrounded. You may not want that with a rocket, so we will also ignore that for this sake. But let's just say you have a DPS phase where you are able to use a rocket and get surrounded safely. It is going to be better than anything we talk about here, but not by a crazy degree that you need to worry about it. What we did test was our general use roll with bait and switch and reconstruction. Well, our first rocket would do 152,210, then our second rocket and all after with bait and switch would do 197,871. Well, from there, you get about 1,339,436 total damage, which is 111,619 DPS. When you adjust for Gjallarhorn being added in, it's about 1.7 million total. Gjallarhorn damage calculations are weird, but just know it is actually lower than our total DPS with our Cataphract, our Edge Transit. So I actually think these are better in cases where you can get them to work. Doesn't mean rockets are bad, but I do think that we have a reason here why it may be worth using a grenade launcher over a rocket. And that reason is actually Gjallarhorn. Well, while Gjallarhorn does buff rockets by quite a bit, the thing with support weapons in Destiny is ideally in a situation where you can get away with not using a support weapon, you will probably have more damage to do so. This is part of why Divinity got nerfed back in the day, is because Divinity was a 30% damage buff. So for having one player use Divinity, even if it wasn't a boss you needed to hit crits with, you were getting more total damage than just having that sixth player just do damage normally anyway. Gjallarhorn is in a similar boat. Gjallarhorn's damage output specifically is not great. It is not the best. It's not terrible, but it's not the best. The main thing that Gjallarhorn does that makes it solid is that Gjallarhorn buffs your teammates' rockets to make you do more damage than you otherwise would. However, I think with some of these grenade launcher changes that there are going to be several situations where your heavy grenade launcher is going to do more damage than your rockets when you have 6 people using them instead of having 5 using normal rockets and then a 6th using Gjallarhorn. The other thing to think about is if any other player is using an exotic heavy weapon that is not a legendary rocket launcher and you have a Gjallarhorn, Gjallarhorn's value is diminished even further. So if you have a tractor cannon for whatever reason, or you have somebody that wants to use Dragon's Breath for whatever reason, then you are going to lose a lot of the value that would be offered by Gjallarhorn because you now have one less player who's getting any bonus. So that's why I think that Cataphract and Edge Transit might be a little better in a lot of situations because they're not dependent on having a support weapon to make them very strong. They're very strong on their own after these buffs that they got a couple of months ago. And that is why I think you should probably use these at least a decent bit of the time. I've found that they're really good, especially in Pantheon. That first week and then the second week, which as of the writing and recording of this video are the only 2 that are out. The second week I was using Apex Predator more, but that's because we had Solar Surge. But that first week where we had Strand, it was absolutely insane compared to a lot of the other options. And I think it's going to be a very solid option moving forward, and I think it's worth it. Again, if you can't get a Cataphract, because as of the time of me writing and recording this video, unfortunately, Cataphract has had its last Trials of Osiris weekend. But you will still be able to get it from Saint 14 for 2 engrams after the season, and on the next time we have Trials, you'll be able to get your Cataphract for 1 engram at the moment, as long as you've gotten it at least once. So you can still get it, it's just not as easy to obtain as it was a few weeks ago. I think it's worth it. I think it's worth it. But let me know what you think in the comments down below, because I am curious to know what you think. But I do really think that this weapon is solid, and you're going to see me using it a lot in the future. And I don't know if it's necessarily the #1 king, because we haven't seen what our raid bosses are in the next expansion yet. We don't really know what bosses they are. There's a huge chance that, linears are going to still be the move for those boss encounters. Or maybe rockets because they're too far away for grenade launchers or something for that matter. But in encounters where they're very solid, something like Caretaker in Vow the Disciple, I think it is probably the best heavy weapon you could use there. If you aren't going to be hitting crits with a linear at that close of a range, I think running bait and switch Cataphract or Edge Transit is a genius idea. So yeah, like I said, let me know in the comments down below. I'm not going to waste any more of your time. My Twitch is linked down below if you want to follow it. But yeah, I have loved getting this video out for y'all. It's been quite a crazy one to make, so if you like it, please let me know. I'll see y'all later. Have a good one, everybody.